Okay, let me just get this on camera before I lose it. The most important thing about the setup that you need to do is get all the firmware sorted out, right? Check it out. It is taking a while. I need the firmware of the drone, the battery, the goggles, and the transmitter to all be on the same page, right? So what you need to do is get all that sorted out before you go out to fly, because you do not want to deal with this out on the field, right? Alright fam, before we get the episode started, I just want to give a quick mention about what's going to be my hustle for 2023. Besides doing YouTube, I've just completed my training and will be shooting for Lightside Studios, alright? So who knows, maybe you'll see me at your corporate or wedding events. And also, not just that, I am also I'll be riding with Food Panda, so do say hi if you see me on the roads or at your doorstep, right? Anyways, what's up fam, Rahim here, and welcome to the DJI Avata manual mode tutorial series. That is a whole mouthful, but anyways, if you want to check out the playlist, it's right up here, right? So in the previous episodes, I have shared with you on how is the dynamics of flying in manual mode, and I have enough emphasized that do go and practice manual mode in the sim first, because I need you to understand the controls, right? You don't understand the controls, flipping it in manual will call for trouble, alright? As simple as that. So now in this episode, I intend to go through with you the settings, right, of getting it into manual mode. It's not, I mean, there's a lot to it, not just as simple as the basic settings, but I'll add on about what you should be setting up your drone to do in case of emergencies, maybe what you need to see on the screen and all that, right, will be covered in this episode. It will also be with some inject of what DIY drone pilots do, right, when we're flying in manual, aka Acro Mode. So a lot of things are based on presumptions that you have already clocked in your mileage on the sim and you already understand the manual mode controls, right? So this is to set you up in order for you to get out there and fly in the skies. If you hear clanking in the background, it's because in my neighborhood there are coffee shops, and in Singapore coffee shops also mean that there'll be alcohol, beers being sold, right? So they are collecting bottles right now, and that's why that's all that clanking. Anyways, I'm gonna push through because I got a Panda shift later. So I need you to know about what's my setup is that I got my mobile phone connected up to my goggles too, right? Of course, the DJI Avata and the transmitter. You need to make sure that all the firmware is already updated. You'll have the correct menu and settings in the goggles, and it should also, I mean, understand the concept. It should also apply for the goggles V2. Damn it, another update. So anyways, your battery has firmware. So if you got the fly more combo, or you got many fly more combos, you got a lot of batteries, get all the batteries updated, the firmware updated, because you do not want to deal with this every single time you switch out batteries out on the field. Okay, ready. Now I'm gonna go into the goggles menu and just run through it in sequence, right? Not gonna cover every single thing because some things are got to do with camera settings that are the film or videography side of things. Transmission settings, right? What you want to do, focus mode, I set mine to auto. The moment that there is a drop in the bitrate, right, the data, so-called the transmission data, then that what will happen is that by the sides of the screen of what you see in the goggles, right, will be pixelated. There is a lot of bottles, right? I think because it was just Christmas, people were drinking a lot. So anyways, push through. Having focus mode allows me to have an early indication of when it starts to pixelate. I know that the area has some bad reception. It keeps the center of the screen clear so that I can at least recover or move away from that zone and get back to a clearer, safer zone, right? So that's where I recommend that you switch your focus mode to auto. So why is that an off? It's for those that still want to use the DVR footage of the goggles as a reserve footage and don't mind slight pixelation full screen, right? Okay, for channel mode, I also do set it on auto. The DJI system will choose for you the best frequencies to work in any given area, right? Why would you want to set it to manual? That's because you may want to avoid certain frequencies, or maybe you want to use certain other bandwidths. So that depends. It depends on how you want to set it up. But for myself, I just leave it on auto. Okay, so now we move on to the bulk of what this episode is about, the settings. Safety wise, your max flight altitude you should set to according to what is allowed in your given country. Like for myself, Singapore, 200 feet, that's about 61 meters, so I just set it at 60 meters. For max flight distance, I don't set any limit, simply because I intend to only fly this at close range and I don't want any form of fail-safe to be activated. So okay, I leave it at no limit. Okay guys, if you hear a humming or buzzing sound, that's because I've got this fan pointed at the drone itself. It's overheating and it keeps wanting to shut off. Okay, for the RTH altitude, right, return to home, I do not want it to go to the maximum height of 60 meters. Basically, it's just a lot of waste of battery, especially if the return home was activated because of low battery power. So what I do on the field is that I'll have to see, like in my surroundings, maybe if the trees are only about 20-30 meters tall, my return home will be just slightly higher than that, right? Slightly taller than that, enough to clear the trees and come back home safely. For update home point, you'd want to do this if you are changing position or you have a specific home point that you want to mark as where the drone will return. Maybe where you switched on your drone, that will be marked as home point. You do not want that specific place to be your home point. Maybe it's at the desk, at the table, right, or a bench out there. Then you want the new home point to be at where you're launching the drone. Okay, so this is where you want to update your home point before you actually start the motors and send the drone up in the sky. So for ESC beeping, right, when you switch it on, this is what you're gonna hear. Alright, one thing is for you to test whether this so-called buzzer is working, because this is something in the controls that I'll show you later about setting up so that is to help you out in the field. Okay, so now we'll go into advanced safety settings. Choose, alright, depending on your situation. Let's just run through. Let's say you're out at sea and something happens that you lose transmission. You'd want the drone to hover in place. You may be on a boat, on a kayak or whatsoever, and you start drifting. The drone has marked that launch point as where it will return home, and if you let it return home to that location, it's gonna land on the water, right? So you don't want that to happen. You're gonna set it at hover so that you can go and let the drone hover in place while you go and retrieve the drone. So next, for the land setting, where or how would you want this to be set is, for example, you're indoors, right? Besides the high altitude, if you think you're in a safe zone, right, you don't need the drone to come and return home to your location, but instead just land in wherever it's at, right? So this is where you'll set to land. Else, then for me, depending on the situation, return home is fine. For emergency propeller stop, that I do not switch on simply because of the maneuvers, right, on the sticks. Let's just see what the instructions are there. When you move the sticks inwards, it's gonna stop the aircraft motors during flight. So I'm doing acrobatic moves in manual mode. Having that switched on may accidentally switch it off up in the sky. Anyways, in manual mode, you can just flip the switch to on and off the motors. Okay, so for the control settings, now under button customization, right, I have my C1. If I were to single press, I'll have the ESC beeping. Somewhere in the bush, then I can at least activate. If the drone is still on, I can still activate the ESC beeping to find the drone easier. For C1 double press, I have it set as turtle mode. This is where, having the mode activated, it will try to recover itself up, right side up. Doesn't always work because sometimes the drone may be stuck, or maybe it's broken a propeller and it cannot help itself right side up. So anyways, you want to see an example, there's a DJI FPV version right up here. So for C2, there is a top, mid and bottom position. I have my C2 top as stop motors. Middle is gonna also stop motors, but I only have one position as start motor, okay, which is the bottom position. You only need one position to switch it on, and in case of emergency, you have the middle and also the other side of it, which is the top, to deactivate the motors. This mode of arming and disarming the drone is actually very common amongst DIY FPV pilots, so you can also set it up this way. Now, here is where you will need to actually set up your drone according to manual mode, right? by default, this switch, right? You see a normal and sport mode, and then there's M. So what? Does M stand for manual mode? Yes, but you'll need to set it up. By default, it is sport mode. It is a safety feature. DJI doesn't want you to accidentally activate it up in the sky if you have not been prepared for manual mode. So that's where I just did a firmware update. So that's where it's on sport mode. I'll need to change it up to manual mode. Right, yeah, I know all this already. By the way, if you're looking to loosen your stick, your throttle stick like mine, right, then you can have a look at this episode right up here. Alright, just a quick view. I am a Mode 2 pilot, right? So these are the controls for Mode 2. Now, if you are not a Mode 2 pilot, be it you're a Mode 1, which is the mirror of it, or you're a Mode 3, which is something different. Anyways, that is depends on what is your comfort level. Generally, most pilots I know are Mode 2, right? So I started learning in Mode 2, so I'm just gonna carry on in Mode 2. So for gain and expo, these are my rates, right? Have a look, see. You may want to just copy and paste and use it as your own rates. Give it a try, because what I have here is that max rate is the full when you have a full deflection of the sticks, how fast the drone is gonna go. Then there is exponential. Expo is whether when you fully the deflection of the sticks, whether it's gonna be linear, right? You give it a bit, it moves a bit. You give it a lot, it moves a lot. Whether you want it linear or you want a more gradual exponential kind of feel. Anyways, all that is explained in my rates video. You can go and also watch that right up here, and it's gonna give you an insight about how you wanna set up your rates. So besides setting your controller switch to manual mode, this M mode altitude limit will also be switched on, right, by default. This is so that even as you go into manual mode, the drone, the attitude, not altitude, attitude of the drone will be limited, right? If you were to pitch forward and you happen to leave it there, pitched forward, the drone is not going to go into a spin. There'll be a limit to how far it pitches or rolls on either side, right? So once you switch this off, which I do, right? So this will fully unleash the manual mode. Basically, if you were to fully deflect the sticks, the drone is gonna go and spin, right? So this is a safety feature. Have it switched on unless you're fully ready and fully understand manual mode. Camera, okay, gonna just point out about electronic image stabilization. If you, like for myself, if I'm just practicing, I will not have the EIS on, right? I put it to off simply because I want to see whether how smooth I am flying. The end footage is gonna be smooth, but having EIS on, right, be it rock steady or horizon steady, I will not know how I'm controlling the drone. Like, it will smoothen out all the rockiness of the footage. So I want to see the rockiness if I'm just practicing, just to see whether I am I pride myself in flying smooth, so I want to see whether I have reached that point of being able to control the drone smoothly, making turns, rising, lowering the altitude and all that, right? So I normally leave it off. About rock steady or horizon steady, you can watch a previous episode on that. Okay, this is camera stuff. Grid lines, I don't have it on because it's very distracting. There's just too many things on the screen. But I do have a center point on. So I want to know where is the center of it so I can level my drone out properly. And also it helps, so-called like to be your crosshair, to point, for you to fly and point your drone towards a specific direction, right? Yes, scrolling down some more will actually reveal more options, which is advanced camera settings. So I normally record with both. It's all memory, as big as your memory card can support. So I will have a video recording both in my drone and also in the goggles, just as a backup, right? In case anything happens to my drone, I still have footage in my goggles. Switching on camera view while recording, having this switched on, what's recorded, the DVR recorded in the goggles is gonna show all the on-screen display, right? Your battery info, your GPS, your distance and all that. So if you don't want all that, then have this switched off. Do I have auto record on takeoff? When you record auto record upon takeoff, yes, it starts recording. But in the case that you crash, right, and the motors shut off, it will actually stop recording. I may actually want that crash, the resultant of that crash to still be recording. So I will not have it this way. Instead, I will record and choose to leave it on recording as long as I can. Okay. Yes, reset. Normally I have my color on the Cine Light. And then, I didn't know that there was a sharpness and noise reduction setting. Okay, this is camera stuff. Moving on. Video subtitles is metadata. Whatever you see on the OSD will be converted in a text form, and then that is the additional file on top of your video file. You can have them both. If you leave it off, also no problem, especially if you don't need that metadata. I wanna point out to you, have the home point switched on, right? That helps me, especially when I'm flying, right? Sometimes maybe doing all the flips and rolls and some freestyle, or maybe I'm going through a dense tree or bush area, and then I may get disoriented and don't know where to come back from, right? So this is where having the home point will help you along. You will actually see a H on the screen when you are pointed in the correct direction, right? Your point of where you launched from. About, now that is information of where you want to see all the aircraft firmware numbers and information, other information about the drone, the battery, and all that. Why would you need to know this is why I'm sharing with you, is because if in the case that you get I don't know, the police or CAAS, the governing body for the airspace in Singapore, these guys come along, they will want to see your registration label. After that, they will ask you whether it tallies with all the firmware numbers and whatever, all these numbers that you see here, whether it tallies and that the label is registered to this specific drone, right? So they have your information in the database. They need to see all this. So yeah, this is where you will assess. Okay, more has got nothing to do with flying out there, but nonetheless, it's about where you can link up to the app, or this is where you can do some wireless streaming. Alright, so that should have covered most about what you should be setting up when you're about to go out there and fly manual mode, right? I know it's a bit lengthy. I know there are things that, Rahim, this is not exactly part about manual mode, but nonetheless, not everyone out there has cliques and friends or flying buddies that to help them out. So I hope I am your flying buddy out there on the field, up there in the skies, right? So if you doing the settings and you are not sure whether in your situation you need to set or not to set, right, leave a comment down below, right, and I'll respond to you as soon as I can by leaving it in the comments. That also helps others that come by and read through the comments and then like, oh, okay, this kind of situation, I'll remember to also set it this way. Else also about the settings, do explore, because I am only giving you the guidelines as to what applies in my region, Singapore, or how I fly my drone. Maybe your situation is different, then of course set it up to your needs. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for this episode. The next episode, I probably will go through with you some good practices out on the field, especially when you're in manual mode, and then what more you could practice up in the skies to make you a better pilot, right? So I'm gonna end this episode right here. I'm gonna need to start editing, post this up, and then get on with my panda shift. Okay, so if you've liked this episode, do give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already. Chat with me, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Pilots, as always, I'll see you in the skies. Peace.